Hello, my name is Robert Schmidt. I'm Deloitte's Chief IoT Technologist, also known as Mr IoT. I have a deep passion for all things digital, and today on my show, Coffee with Mr IoT, my guest is JD Stanley. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We are actually at Capital Factory, which is almost a home for you, isn't it?
Yes, no, I hang out here quite often.
So you hang out here quite often in various forms. Tell us a little bit about that, because I know you're a mentor and you have a company that is part of this. So just give us a little bit of a background.
Yeah, so I've been in tech for 25 years or so. Various jobs, various positions. I was personally go break glass and then have problems after that. I was 19 years at Cisco, so I did very pioneering things from consulting side, very similar to Deloitte, through to the engineering and R&D side. And about a year and a half ago, a friend of mine asked to go ahead and leave the corporate world and kind of help him out. And so there's a big story with that, a great story if you'd like to hear that one.
Yeah, go for it. I'd be curious.
But I'll give you a little bit who I am now.
Okay, that sounds great.
There's three kind of things I do. One is I have my startup with my co-founder. Two is I'm a mentor at the Capital Factory. And the Capital Factory, I think, as you saw with Josh in the past, it's becoming a great epic center here in Texas, but nationally, especially with Army Future Command showing up here. That 8th floor is where I hang out a lot because some of my company does some defense work, but also commercial work. And then also I belong to a Central Texas Angel Network, which is a small community of investors, but it's actually one of the largest angel networks in the nation. And so, it's in the 200, 300 phase, or like 200, 300,000, but also they can go up to $1 million plus. But it's a great way to see how this really works, is doing angel investing, very small scale, but seeing how that community works. Working as a mentor at the Capital Factory with the accelerator, which are usually startups also, through to maturity where some of the companies make it to a Series A and Series B. And then also being a startup, participating both in the commercial and also the government sector.
How do you find time for all of that?
It's
you have a startup, and then you mentor, and you do angel investing. I get the angel investing part, but that sounds like a lot of stuff at the same time.
Well, it works great. So there's another company that's called Logzilla. They're a CTN investment. Because of my background from Cisco, they said, JD, why don't you go on the board? So I'm a board member there. And we brought them into the accelerator. So they're joining in the next couple of months. But they have a direct relevancy because they have some customers in the government side. Which is really tied into what's going on with the Army Application Lab. And so when you see the little synergies there, it's a great conversation because I can come to the Capital Factory, take advantage of the great stuff Josh has built here and the whole team, and have that conversation with someone who says, hey, I got to start up, I'm trying to do these things. Well, great. Have you thought about angel investors? Have you thought about being an accelerator? Or government contractors really hard. Or a lot of these startups don't have the corporate experience, like my Cisco background, whether it be going to market, those types of things. So my conversation can be really fun and exciting because you get to meet people and help out, give back a little. And that's a fun part of this. At the same point in time, because of my startup is very ubiquitous in IoT, I get a chance to maybe find some opportunities, some deals potential or connections of connections. And you probably know how that works. Is it's about networking and about people to be able to figure out where the opportunities are, especially in the hype of IoT. So it's fun. Am I really busy? Absolutely. But it's a lot of fun.
It's awesome. Thanks for being here. I'm going to take the bait on the story. I want to hear the story. What happened when you were at Cisco and your friend called you?
Yeah, so my co-founder I've been with on and off for like 12 years. We have this kind of, I'm an old Boston boy, this kind of relationship that kind of don't mess me over. I won't use the swear words, and I won't mess you over. And that's how I first met him back in 2008. But that was when John Chambers and Pete Warden at NASA Ames created a project called the Planetary Skin Institute, which was actually to basically take me out of the defense side and go save the planet, where we were doing geospatial signal analysis, but also IoT. So well before IoT was a thing, we were doing sensor networks out in the rainforest with pigs eating our sensors. Pretty cool.
Pigs eating your sensors.
Yeah, so they loved the wires for their nests, so in their little homes. So it was, but we didn't know that at first. Over time, a couple months, our water sensors disappeared. Where'd those go? So we put little cameras out there, and this is 2009 or so. And so that journey was great because I was sequestered out of Cisco for 4 years into this nonprofit to really kind of push the envelope of IoT, analytics, geospatial, visualization, some really cool things. The shame was at the end of the 4 years, the market wasn't quite great in 2008 for a nonprofit. We had burned through the cash that we'd gotten from that in Brazil, and we had a choice of coming back for our careers inside Cisco or keep going in the nonprofit. And we all 4 of us decided to come back. But my current co-founder, he was the one that I had my first generation sensor platform with. And so he's on his 3rd generation. He was at the Army lab at Stanford. He's an ex-NASA scientist, an ex-HP exec. He's done a couple of very small startups and spun them out. But he's been working on the sensor platform basically on and off with me for a generation, 10 years plus. And so when he said, I'm ready to go, I need your corporate expertise. We need to go figure out how to take this out of an R&D mode, out of projects, and go to the market. And so that's kind of where we are. We came up with a name, which is kind of funny in today's hype world. We're able to get a
You
good
really were
domain.
able to buy IoT.ai a year and a half ago.
So the story behind that is I came up with 100 names, right? So leaving corporate world going, okay, what kind of startup? There's all these startups, all these names. So then here's my list. And then Kevin, my co-founder, said, wait, JD, customer said use this. And this isn't recorded anywhere, so you're getting a lot. I said, there's no way that is available. Absolutely no way. Come on, I've been doing M&A at Cisco. I've been doing business and products and services. There's no way. This hype is here. There's no way. He goes, no, we got to try it. I said, fine. So we sat on the web looking small businesses and filings, and no one had the company, believe it or not, out of these 20 years. And then second is most of the domains were available except for a couple. And so we said, we're going to go ask people. And that came to the top of the list. We even were like, how would we say the name? Do we say IoT, right? Or do we say IoT? And everyone said, no, you spell it out. And the cool thing was both him and I have a background in IoT and in analytics and in cybersecurity. And so we're no BS people. And we knew that we had real stuff behind it. And so we said, we're going to go for it. And then we ran into a great individual who wanted to be part of it. And he actually had the domain of IoT.ai. And so
he had the
so we figured out how to work with him and made him part of it. And that allowed us to go from an IoTAI.io, which we owned, over to an IoT.ai. And so that started our journey as a company of taking assets from my co-founders' other areas, bringing them all the licensing in, making sure we had real stuff behind us, all an engineering company right now, very, very kind of early startup, but real tech, real stuff, those type of capabilities. And that's how we got to
Very cool.
my startup.
That's awesome. Bringing the person in who owned it. That's smart.
Yes.
So maybe I didn't hear it right, but you keep calling it a sensing platform. You don't call yourself an IoT platform. Is that on purpose?
Well, and that's part of the funny story. So in 2008, when we were doing all the planetary skin things, there's an IoT company, I'll pronounce it now, but Nebuleo out there by Flavio. Flavio was vice president of R&D inside Cisco back then. And his research team, him and Satish, worked with me to kind of create the first hybrid cloud between NASA, Cisco, and 9 phones, actually in building 7 of San Jose. And so that actually was the early kernel of Fog. So Flavio actually does a Fog company out there, and it's a great company, and he's out there. But that was before Fog was even created. And so the reason I mentioned that history is
Can you
because...
just talk for a second? What is Fog for you?
Well, Fog is really just providing some compute or analysis or more connectivity towards that kind of LAN edge for sensor environments.
Got it. Okay.
And this is where slightly different where we are. What we prided ourselves on back then and even now is being sensor experts. So my co-founder Kevin and his team have gone through over 5,000 sensors and everything from biochemistry sensors to noise sensors to vibration sensors, and they're sensor experts. So our platform has been specifically built from the sensor in mind. And that's how we got to becoming a sensor platform. So we do IoT, and that's kind of what the market calls it. But we have a sensing platform that fuses analytics with a kind of a mesh radio. It's a proprietary radio approach, but the radio goes through metal and it goes through deep forest, which is important for industrial settings, but also the military settings. And then additionally, we put cybersecurity all around it, and then we have analytics on it.
What does that mean, you put cybersecurity around it? I know it sounds good. It's everybody wants to hear it, but what does it actually mean underneath the hood?
Yeah, so as part
You
of...
have to shoot me if you tell me.
No, this is, there's some things I can't disclose, of course. But the good thing about this is this is a little bit why I left a really great career at Cisco. I loved Cisco. Is that he's been doing this in non-dilutional funding in millions. And so the government helped get us to where we are. And additionally, though, in some of the use cases, when you talk about the mission side, there's some really critical things about security you have to account for. The commercial industry doesn't account for as much. And so when we talk about a hardened cybersecure type device, it goes across many different areas, including the physical components of it, not just the outside. It goes well beyond anti-tamper. Additionally, we include things that are in the firmware and the middleware parts of the devices and the sensor network. And then our radio also is very secure. And so cybersecurity is another buzzword, but we do it at multiple levels. And even if we're not doing it perfectly for whatever the customer environment is, to say it's an industrial control system and they want to use some open standards, we've also put, once again, one of the hype words that's out there, edge compute. In my days of edge compute, typically sits at the edge of a LAN also. We put compute actually in the sensor platform, which is as close to the sensors you can get. And so that allows us to host third-party software. So other people's machine learning models or other people's security models, those types of things. So it's a great set of technology to address kind of, and maybe you can help. There's two markets that are not well published. One is in tactical IoT, and that's why the relationship with the Capital Factory and what's going on here with the defense industry.
Tactical IoT?
So these are security bases, and you think about UAVs, like the news recently, they're very hackable. And so there's different things, different ways people do about it, but there's our general level of sensors that are very accessible that need to be integrated into a mission environment. And so that's kind of, IoT sensors for physiological to biochemical, those types of things. That's tactical IoT. And then the other part of that is extreme IoT. So a lot of industrial customers, energy utility, they still struggle with connections. I worked for Boeing for many, many years on the factory floor, and it wasn't always a radio network issue to be able to connect up wireless in the early days. There's even regulations, right? Safety, unions, things that you can't put wires in certain areas. And so when you think about metal-rich environments and thermoelectric power plants or distribution, oil and gas facilities, you have to, if you instrument those to be wireless, typically you have to put dozens and dozens of repeaters to get around through all the interference.
Isn't that why you said you have a mesh radio in your...
We do, but our radio
that
actually...
works around it or not?
Yeah, so our radio is, the intelligence allows it to go directly through metal, if it can. And if it can't, then it actually finds the next best hop. But it doesn't require all the repeaters that are required today.
Well, each individually kind of like make this repeat itself.
Yeah,
right?
so in the valley, we actually have an instance that goes up to 50 miles, which direct connect, nothing in between.
That means you almost go outside the valley.
Yes, it is. It's up in Santa.
Not that big.
It's in Santa Cruz Mountain over to Fremont.
Oh, interesting.
We've done UAVs. We've done actually aircraft to ground. So there's some pretty cool tech, and that's the exciting thing that really drives me now.
That's cool. So I just wanted to clarify. You talked about radios. You talked about compute on the sensor. That means you must do hardware as well as software.
Yes, which you probably know in the space of this world, it's really hard doing hardware. But because of the limitations that exist in the environments of like extreme IoT and tactical IoT, the hardware is necessary. But there's great companies that do good examples of like a Samsara, Cradlepoint. The business model of a managed service exists. At Cisco, I watched Meraki be very successful, which is the Samsara folks. So those models exist. IoT is very hypey though, and so really what you got to do is solve a customer problem. In these cases, it's condition monitoring, predictive maintenance, When you talk to companies like a Salesforce, workers are still doing manual recording of their labor when they're in these really hard to reach areas. And so unlocking that a little bit is a great opportunity for the customer, for big providers like a Salesforce, Amazon, Cisco, Dell, Microsoft, or also for startups who are trying to say, hey, look, I got a little bit of analytics package for oil and gas, but I can't get the data. And so there's something out there to go attack. And as a startup, that's what you go try to do, is figure out how to solve the customer problem, how to attack that problem, how to do it cost effectively, and then try to bridge all the other big integrations. Very ambitious, but that's...
So a year and a half into your startup.
Year and a half.
Do you have a product that's on the market today?
We do. So today we do make some money. The money typically is in...
Hey, I talked about a product. You took it right to the money. Here comes the CEO on you.
So we do make some money, but we make them in projects, right? So because we are a startup, we had to take the various assets and then figure out what was real. And that's kind of where we are today. And so also though, last year, because when I was at Cisco, I did do some analysis for companies for them to buy. It usually was always in a BU, and I'd be one of those people to go poke at the company to say, is it a good one or not? And so I understand a little bit of that side of the market. And so we pulled way back to say, okay, what do we really have? Because we almost do too much when you talk to a VC, when you talk to the market. And so we said, pull it back and go win some things. And so we won recently a good government-funded award who really validated our project and basically said, hey, if you could take it and help you miniaturize it even more, which is great. And so that helped validate revenue and validate the customer and validate the tech. And then also we do a lot of work with an industrial customer also and got put into a thermoelectric power plant of one of their customers. And that also helped validate. And so for the last 6 months, it was basically pull the company way back, reevaluate market fit. Do we really see a market or not? Those markets don't exist. I kind of mentioned to you, no one covers them that way, but they're emerging markets, or they're markets where there's problem statements that customers still have. And so now we're at a stage where we have some customers. We are moving towards our partnership with the Capital Factory. We are moving towards helping to enable the mission for defense customers, and then helping to unlock those with some commercial customers too. That's kind of the stage we're at. Mostly all engineering. So we're at the stage of trying to build a growth engine. That's where we'll be heading next. So. And
you're building the product along the way?
We actually have products. We sell it in projects today. So the platform exists. We'll follow a managed service model where we can. We'll follow a licensing model and transactional model, probably more on the government side because that's how they buy. But we do have all of that. But we're doing it in very targeted use cases with customers to continue the market fit. It's not something you just buy offline off of a partner right now, if that's what you're looking for. So.
No, I was actually not looking for anything.
But the product does exist today.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like I said, it's a third gen. That's where I have to go back to the story of this has been being built for many generations, and it's not a startup with a hypey name that only has hypey tech. So we do physical-logical monitoring. For the Air Force, for example.
You do what?
Physical-logical monitoring.
Okay.
We did noise exposure for the Air Force. Some pretty cool genetic algorithms behind the scene that allowed us to actually identify human health risk, proclivity to hearing loss. And so safety and exposure, those things, volatile compounds, we have projects that are using them live deployments. In other cases, IoT analytics companies, they can't get enough of the data from flow control valves. So we actually helped one of those companies get more data. Including vibration sensors and flow control valves.
So I want to switch a little bit gear from your startup to two things. First, I'm curious, you switched from corporate to startup. It's a big shift. It's actually probably, I don't know if you agree with this, it's a late shift for many. Many do it the other way around.
Yes.
They start in startup and then go to corporate. How was the shift for you? How did that go? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as I said, my career inside Cisco was great. I loved Cisco folks. I loved where Cisco allowed me to have freedom to do innovation. So I was always a CTO-ish like person doing different projects. I would live through a lot of organizations that shifted didn't survive. So that was always challenging. Lots of friends no longer at Cisco. But Cisco itself
Well, Cisco was one of the first ones to really market IoT as IoT,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
it existed before. You know where it came from?
Go ahead and refresh my memory.
Carnegie Mellon.
That's right.
There was a guy on the 7th floor who didn't want to walk down to the 2nd floor for the Coke machine, and so that's where it got started. But anyhow, Cisco really marketed it first and really was big on that. So
Yeah,
anyhow.
and you may know like someone like Jim Green from Composite. He's a legendary serial entrepreneur. He was my partner working on Watson for Cisco. So the history of IoT, I've lived through many of those use cases. The challenge is capturing those use cases is hard. And so me transitioning with my friend was an ideal opportunity because the market is still immature to some extent. ROIs aren't always there, as you would know from Deloitte. We're talking
We've
to
been
customers.
doing actually pretty good lately with our proof of value.
Well, that's good because if you go back a few years, it wasn't quite there.
It was harder.
And so things are evolving. It is a very crowded market. But I thought this was my good chance to try it. And you're right, it is a later part of the career. The benefit is the experience allows me to help navigate it faster. That's helpful. The risk is, kids going to school, much smaller income, a lot higher risk profile now, but that's, at a later stage where you don't want the higher risk profile. And so that's the journey I'm on. But that journey helps as a mentor at the Capital Factory.
Absolutely.
Because now I get to go in and I'm living it with them, but tell them the wisdom of being an old guy and say, look, here's the things you got to watch out for. Like for myself, I don't know how many VCs will be watching your profile, but my view is every startup has to have a plan to some type of exit, because unicorns are really hard. They don't really exist. And so a lot of the mentoring I do is as soon as you get to an A, make sure you got acqui-hire strategies lined up, just backups. If your growth isn't there, to make sure that you find a way to exit. In your industry with partners, you can keep going if you can, B rounds, C rounds, D rounds. But the equity decreases for founders, especially employee pools as you get later in the series. And they don't all end up, kind of popping. And so that's also where my experience just comes into handy, says you got to balance it.
Well, I got to give it to you. I mean, it's not just brave, but I really admire you going and taking all your knowledge and putting it into something that you have passion for and so forth. I want to ask you, my last question is really about maybe appealing to your mentor, hearing from your mentor a bit, and also from your M&A kind of part of the brain. I look at the IoT market and to a certain extent probably the AI market also. There's just so many companies, and today when I put a project together, it's always like it has to have a platform, it has to have a network provider, it has to have a hardware provider. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like I have 5 or 6 different players that all play with us, and it's complicated, and it's also difficult for my clients. Whom do I trust to be around? So I have this expectation that we're going to see consolidation, but maybe I'm totally wrong. What do you think? What do you recommend as mentors to IoT and AI companies? Probably tell yourself too. And what do you think from an M&A point of view on this?
Yeah, so ultimately that what drives me, it's customer results. So, but I'll tell you the practical of what you're asking is this. The big players have account control. They know how to get in, right, advise, especially the IT ones. The system integrators, like yourself or Booz or any of those others, the challenge they have is they have account control too, but they don't have some of the tech, so they have to do more of the integration. Where what I would advise you or any of those types of players is we live in a world where you can build your own little machine learning modules because you have really good business process context, and then find ways to put them out there. And that's even like why we built our platform to be hosting of a third-party machine learning modules, because that's really the market that's evolving. It's not a dedicated module always at the end because the use cases are variable. And AI is one of these things that has great advancements, but there's a lot of unknowns in AI. And part of that is because it's usually a lot of smart people behind the scenes that make the AI work. A lot of Wizard of Oz characteristics. That help tune the algorithms, who help adjust the graph theories, help adjust, the Bayesian, whatever those are. there's a lot of adjustments.
So put the IP into what the machine learning does rather than what it runs on.
Well, yes and no. It depends, right? So
Now you sound like me.
because it's use case driven, and that's why I said it depends on where you're coming from. If it's the tech giants, right? They want it into the platform. They want it in the hardware. They want to have that. If you're the industrial players, they do a lot of verticalization, right? If you're a system integrator like you or an advising consultant, you want to be able to more troubleshoot those unique problems that they're running into. And so you pick best of breed, but a lot of times you also have your own experts who could turn that faster. Startups, because it goes back to your question. So as a mentor at the Capital Factory, and a lot of the ones who've seen me before I mention them, I will tell them the same thing. And it's like the challenge they have is trying to be the best at any of those can be really challenging. And sometimes they come up with really good tech, but they may not have the customer access or context. So find a strategic partner and do it that way. Additionally, though, and I saw this, acqui-hires by the big companies is a
What hires?
Acqui-hires where you acquire because of talent is a very good strategy to plan for, which most industry doesn't really talk about. You don't always get the big 30% X return that investments want or investors want, but there's lots of investments that don't pan out. So an acqui-hire strategy says this: go do land grab of a certain customer problem set, get in there with one customer, and do the 1-5-10 model, which I learned from Jim Green. I'll give him full credit for this. Capture one customer, capture the next 5 customers, capture the next 10 customers. So that is what I would say you have to do as a startup. Go capture those customers. Try to do it, what I learned at Cisco, rinse, repeat. If you can't figure out a rinse, repeat market fit, you're doing something wrong because you're going to overspend on customer lifecycle, you're going to overspend in customization, and lots of startups fail that way. When I say land grab, the whole intent is you grab enough of an installed base to give you credence with those other players watching you say, well, maybe I partner with you versus build it myself. And you can see that across healthcare. You can see it across IoT and industrial. Those exist. And they always are challenged with build it themselves. But that gives you at least a sense, some idea of a mentoring, especially how we talk to folks at the Capital Factory saying, how do you think about the market fit? How do you think about accelerating? And then how do you think about exits? And then Central Texas Angel Networks do the same. They do the same thing when they're asking and mentoring customers, say, or their startups, what's your exit? What strategic would buy you? Those are the things to think about. Now, if you can make it big in IoT, great. Personally, I feel like that market's still forming. And the data, a lot of sensors are miscalibrated. All the bad data and bad sensors, because you asked me earlier why we should do sensors, I focus on sensors a lot because calibration of sensors is extremely important for quality data and data density in AI. Today's AI and today's machine learning is based sometimes a lot on bad data that then smart people go and calibrate in the machine learning models. So that's why we start with how do we improve the performance of the sensors and then work from there northbound to help out.
Well, I can definitely see what your difference is about your company, IoT.ai. I'm hypothesizing in my head what your exit strategy is, but we'll keep that for another show.
Who knows?
I'm sure that's going to fill up a whole show on its own.
Yeah. We have to build the company fully first, right? Yeah, sales teams and next generation, phases, those types of things. So.
JD, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure meeting you too.
And enjoyed the conversation. And with that, this brings our Coffee with Mr IoT of today to an end. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe up there to the channel and the playlist. And if you missed any of the past shows, please come back. And for today, I'm going to say thank you and goodbye.